Thank you for welcoming us. We'll be presenting critically reflecting on identity texts, equity-based practice, and teacher education. And as you can see, there's a great many authors on this piece. So we will be introducing ourselves as we go. My name is Amanda Seabrook. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a first-year PhD student at Western University in the Faculty of Education in the field of curriculum studies. Okay, so our background here consists of the Ontario Ministry of Education and how it endeavors to provide inclusive education for all students, regardless of their identity, and through their mandate of all teachers, that they embody the role of teachers of English as a second language, regardless of their experience or expertise. Traditional monoglossic teacher education programs often provide shallow perspectives on multilingual students' complex and changing identities, often too focused on linguistic skills and ignoring the depths of intersection and interaction of different aspects of their identities. Identity text frameworks like that of Cummins and Early have become a ubiquitous tool in many classrooms as teachers attempt to empower their students and fulfill their role as teacher of English as a second language. As stated by Zaidi and Elchar, when individuals are faced with a perceived conflict between rules from their native culture and those of the culture in which they are interacting, they experience transcultural dissonance. This transcultural dissonance is exacerbated by a lack of safe space and inclusive narratives, leading to the erasure of certain aspects of learner identity that may be perceived as conflicting with school or classroom rules and expectation. In this way, implicit messaging from the hidden curriculum tells multilingual students that only certain aspects of their cultures and languages are welcome, while multifaceted complexities of their identities, such as sexuality, gender, or queerness, are not. Which brings us to the use of identity texts in classrooms, conceived of and used with hopes for empowerment of multilingual students and disruption of classroom hierarchies. And while we see great value in the use of identity texts in this way, we also wonder about and problematize uncritical, non-intersectional use of this framework in language and literacy education, where the very ubiquity of identity texts may inadvertently contribute to implicit messaging that encourages the masking of learner identity, or worse, encourages learners to produce and present narratives that perpetuate the types of assumptions and privileging of certain identities that identity text frameworks were conceptualized to disrupt. Our first theoretical framework is social constructivism. And of course, learners are viewed as active subjects capable of constructing meaning and learning through their lived social experiences and interactions. And teachers take on a role of supportive facilitation to weave learners' experience and understanding into real-world examples as a means of learning consolidation. The second theoretical framework is critical theory, which, when applied to the field of education, examines how a system of unequal power in society is maintained and partly recreated by means of transmission of culture. Like all critical approaches to education, critical applied linguistics and critical bilingualism is social justice and action-oriented. As described by Pennycook, this refers to the ability to not just speak two languages, but to be conscious of the sociocultural, political, and ideological contexts in which the languages, and therefore the speakers, are positioned and function, and the multiple meanings that are fostered in each. And this is largely what we have discussed as it relates to the identity texts in this paper. Our third theoretical framework is that of reflective practice. Considered a mark of professional competence, it refers to the ability to engage in critical analysis of practice, principles, theories, and practices. It's the ability to make appropriate adjustments based on that reflection and co-reflection. C'est un moyen de réfléchir sur les effets de la mise en pratique dans le développement des apprenants et en tenir compte pour réorienter la pratique. It includes self-reflection, and in our case, critical co-reflection, where educators reflect on their role and their positionality, and recognizing and valorizing students' funds of knowledge. And like the previous presentation, it comes back to teacher beliefs and practices. In our literature review, we looked at learning identity and identity texts. What is their purpose and how are they meant to be used? They were conceptualized, of course, as I said earlier, by Cummins and Erling as a means of pedagogical empowerment of learners targeted by marginalization, stemming specifically from their socioeconomic background, racialized status, linguistic, cultural, or religious difference. They are meant to be affirming, inclusive, multimodal, and collaborative. Identity texts are an artifact representing how a learner perceives themselves and their role in the world. And we know that relational dynamics between educators and students affect learner engagement and their sense of self and self-worth and their success in the classroom. Importantly, while these autobiographical artifacts are produced by individual learners, identity is complex, fluid, and affected by social experience and expectation, and thus socially constructed.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Chuan. I will present the next section of our literature review. And we also reviewed literature regarding translanguaging. It refers to a dynamic meaning-making process that aims to enhance multilingual students' learning by incorporating social, cultural, and linguistic resources and the multimodalities to promote social justice in multilingual educational contexts. Translanguaging enhances students' comprehension and overall performance by creating spaces that encourage multilingual students to access their full linguistic and cultural resources, thereby offering voices to language marginalized students. And also, we reviewed literature regarding multiliteracies, literacy curriculum that promotes identification of social power through and throughout collective meaning-making processes, using reading, writing, and oral language to extract, construct, integrate, and critique meaning through interaction and involvement with socially situated practices. So it encourages critical model interactions with interrogate hidden interests, meanings, and biases. And it empowers learners to fully participate in complex social systems by negotiating relationships between practice, text, context, and purposes.
Hi, I'm Shelley Taylor. And I'm professor of TESOL and Applied Linguistics at Western and TESOL president. And I was the instructor of the course in which my co-presenters developed their identity texts. So in our course, we approached developing these texts as developing ethnographies of the self with the self as participant. Each participant selected how to represent themselves in different languages and modes, and the methodology involved moving from participants' individual critical reflections to group reflections on the texts that their peers developed. The experience is drawn on related in greater and lesser extent to themes we touched on in our course, and they went from broadly multi-everything, multilingualism, multiliteracies, to multimodalities, to funds of knowledge. Usually identity texts focus on students' funds of knowledge, but with the students being at the elementary level. And in our course, we showcased educators' funds of knowledge because they are also important, just as educators' positionality is important. And we also drew on Tova Skutnam-Kangus's work on linguicism. I'd like to pay special tribute to Tova and her life's work as she passed away unexpectedly early this week. Now I'll pass it on to Xuan, who will describe the actual process people followed to develop their identity texts.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Taylor, and I will elaborate on the process. So a group of multilingual Faculty of Education graduate students explored whether and how teacher experience with identity tags and identity options might affect teacher perspectives and understandings of learner identity and identity tags production. So first, we develop our artifact, and each participant produced their own multilingual, multimodal identity tags. And then we share our identity tags, and then collectively and critically reflect on our identity text. And then we conduct a thematic analysis, and 3 strong themes emerged during collective process of critical reflection. Participants shared the stories, challenges, and experiences that inform their identity tags to explore the process and possible opportunities these may inform related to teacher identity text production.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Li Wen C2, and I'm a first-year MA student in Applied Linguistics, also from Western University. And while most of my co-presenters are online today, I'm super honored and excited to be here today. And so the first theme of our finding is multiliteracy and power identity text creation. So first, I will share my identity tags. So growing up in Canton, China, where Mandarin, Cantonese, and regional dialects were coexisting, and now living in Canada, Toronto, Canada, one of the most linguistic diverse societies in the world. Before creating this identity tags, I've never had the opportunity to actually explore and reflect on my full linguistic identity. So, so when I think of choosing creative and most appropriate form of text to do this identity tags, I put a lot of thought on that. And finally, I came up with, I thought of the songs that I always listen. So I'm thinking, why not I analyze these songs and see what they can tell me about my identities. So this poster was the result. The list of the languages was surprisingly long. So Mandarin, my first and second languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, and English, take up the biggest percentage. And also my favorite singer, Wei Yinfeng, my favorite band, the Beatles, and my albums, 乐队的夏天, they are all in my 3 major languages. And but the other at least 7 languages are also on the list that I listen regularly. Particular, the most listened songs in my list 2022 was in Japanese as well. And besides linguistic identities, the keywords and arrows also reveal some of the important parts of my identity. So in short, I think the whole experience was experience of surprise and affirmation. So that's it for my part. Next, let's welcome Julie. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I will be doing my part in French, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. So, je m'appelle Julie Marion. Je vous présente mon texte identitaire qui a été influencé par mon rôle comme maman, ainsi que mon rôle comme enseignante dans les écoles francophones ici en Ontario. J'ai choisi d'utiliser les 2 aspects, l'aspect visuel et l'aspect audio, pour démontrer la diversité linguistique et la diversité culturelle qui existe chez moi. Donc, j'ai utilisé une photo récente de ma famille sans visage, vous ne pouvez pas les voir pour l'instant, et superposée par le drapeau italien et le drapeau franco-ontarien qui démontrent les cultures qui sont présentes à la maison. J'avais créé des clips audio qui sont des enregistrements qui ont été faits des moments intimes en famille, les conversations durant le souper, le temps de devoir, ainsi que l'heure du coucher, sont des moments qui ont été totalement naturels, non scriptés, pour démontrer la capacité de mes enfants d'utiliser les deux langues, qui sont l'anglais et le français chez moi, de façon interchangeable et même en synergie, que souvent vous pouvez les entendre utiliser les deux en même temps. Sachant les avantages du bilinguisme, ainsi que l'importance de maintenir nos cultures et langues, le français chez moi est utilisé en combinaison avec l'anglais, souvent presque en majorité de mon côté quand même, qui offre, parce que je veux vraiment que mes enfants ont le même avantage linguistique que moi j'ai subi pendant mon enfance. Donc, c'est ça que vous voyez dans mon texte et merci beaucoup.
This next identity text is by our colleague Li Han, but it doesn't seem that she was able to join us. So we will move on to the next theme, and I hope that before we're done our presentation, she might sign on and then she might be able to talk to you about her identity text at the end.
The second finding, we find that most of us are multilingual speakers in our class. Translanguaging empowered identity task creation embrace the complexity of language and identity, enabling the individuals to express themselves authentically. We are going to use our first language and English to present our identity test. And here is my identity test. My name is Mengjiao Han. I'm a first-year master student in curriculum study. 我叫韩梦娇，在西安大略大学读教育学研究生。I have spent most of my time in China. I arrived in Canada in August last year. 去年8月，我来到加拿大。在此之前，我一直生活在中国。While at Beijing International Study University, I spent 2 months volunteering as a language teacher in Nepal and Sri Lanka. The time I spent with my students developed my passion for teaching and language learning. 在北京第二外国语学院学习期间，我在尼泊尔和斯里兰卡进行了为期2个月的语言教师志愿者工作。At that time, my attitude towards English changed. 在此期间，我对英语的态度有所转变。Before high school, I studied English for test. For now, I learned it for communication, which gave me a better understanding of English. Seeing the impact that I could make encouraged me to focus on teaching as a career, and I'm willing to learn more about language in the future. 在未来，我希望学习更多语言。And here's my identity test. Thank you so much. Let's welcome Philip.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Felipe. I'm from Brazil. I'm a master's student in curriculum studies at Western University. And toda a minha vida eu tive desejo no coração de ser a mudança que eu quero ver. Então, tornei-me professor. Meio que por acaso, mas olhando para trás, não foi assim. Eu sempre gostei da ideia de gerar transformação, de promover aprendizado, de colocar em prática coisas normalmente aprendidas somente na teoria. Então, aqui estou, professor, aprendiz, leitor, tentando aproveitar cada oportunidade que a vida oferece para que eu possa, de fato, ser a mudança que eu quero ver, pequeno passo de cada vez. So, something about my identity text is that I always considered the idea that I should be the change that I want to see in society and in the world. So if I do my part, I believe, and I always have believed that this is something that makes a difference. Even it's a small one, but it's a start. And it's what I can do. And being a teacher always brought me the feeling that I was and I am doing something to promote this change, promote something that is positive to the society. So, and coming to Canada kind of took me out those, those achievements that I have I have made throughout my life as a teacher. Because in Canada, it doesn't matter your career. You have to start over. This is the feeling that I have, and this is something that resonated with me as I was doing my identity text. So thank you so much for listening.
Hi, I am Hao Bing, and I am a first-year MA student in the curriculum study at Western University. And there is my identity test on the left side of my identity test are the iconic building of my hometown and the location of my hometown on the world map. On the right is the famous food of my hometown. There are some text in my native language. There are some pictures such as Shenzhen, Zhou, Dianxin, and Changfeng. Below the text of my identity test are the paragraph about the Shenzhen in the food. Shenzhen is an international city, is a city with a diverse range of the culture, language, and the lifestyle coverage and coexist around my birthplace known Shenzhen. Shenzhen has been with going on. Shenzhen is also a city of the gastronomy, Shenzhen food culture, and is a combination of the Chinese food culture and the Western Chinese and the Western food culture. Shenzhen unique food included dim sum, yogurts, rice noodle roll, and ale. And the recent thing there's a Chinese language empowered identity test creation. Our identity test show our culture and the native language and translate our native language into the English. And next is our things.
Hi, Sarah, we cannot hear you. No.
Sarah's still here?
So do you have my voice now?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
we can hear you now. Thank you.
Sorry for the problem. Okay. So I introduce myself again. My name is Zahra Heydarian. I'm first year PhD student in curriculum studies from Western University. And about the findings of this research, theme 3 is socially constructed identity text enlightening teachers' ideology. So here is my identity text. So let me introduce myself first as an EFL teacher, as a mother, an Iranian woman, and also a PhD student. I was born in 1985 in Mashhad, Iran. I deeply appreciate my country's rich heritage of art, literature, music, and tradition. As a TFL teacher and a PhD student, I focus on examining gender representation in textbooks, aiming to produce inclusivity and diversity in the classroom. Also, my thesis proposal and my thesis MA was on the gender representation in EFL textbooks in Iran. I strive to enhance language education, believing that everyone deserves access to quality education, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background. Outside academia, I find fulfillment in exploring cultures, spending time with loved ones, and maintaining an active lifestyle with actually producing some articles or writing some papers and trying to publish them. My goal is to contribute to a more equitable society while pursuing my passion. And now this is my identity text in my own home language, that is in Persian or Farsi. من در سال 1985 در شهر مشهد ایران به دنیا آمدم. برایم فرهنگ ایران که شامل هنر، ادبیات، موسیقی و سنت است، دارای ارزش و الهام بخشی بی‌نهایت است. به عنوان یک معلم و دانشجوی دکترا تمرکز تحصیلی خود را بر روی بررسی نمود جنسیت در کتاب‌های درسی قرار دادم و هدفم ارتقاء جامعه پذیری و تنوع در آموزش است. با ارتقاء جامعه پذیری I mean inclusivity and by تنوع در آموزش I mean diversity. به باورم تمام افراد بدون توجه به جنسیت، نژاد یا زمینه اقتصادی حق دسترسی به آموزش با کیفیت را دارند. علاوه بر اینکه با خانواده و دوستانم وقت می‌گذرانم، برای حفظ یک زندگی پرشور تلاش می‌کنم و از ارتباط با افراد در فرهنگ‌های مختلف لذت می‌برم. هدف من کمک به ایجاد جامعه‌ای عادلانه‌تر است، در حالی که رویاها و علاقه‌های خود را دنبال می‌کنم. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, me again. So my own experience creating an identity text was tricky. I'm a white settler, I'm raised in Ontario, I speak both of Canada's colonial languages. And so the initial purpose of identity text creation, the empowering multilingual learners whose languages rarely make it meaningfully into classrooms, didn't really apply to me. And so when I was thinking about identity text, I found that the point, I think, is to share aspects of your identity that are not often openly celebrated. And so I grappled with which aspects of myself to share. As far as I knew, my professor and classmates were unaware that I'm queer. I certainly had not come out to them. And in addition to this, I have physical and learning disabilities, and as those make up important aspects of my identity, I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to broach that either. Je savais que je voulais absolument inclure mes deux langues. Cela dit, concevoir une façon de me représenter avec la fierté sans trop me divulguer m'a nécessité beaucoup de temps et d'efforts. I finally settled on sharing a Dungeons and Dragons character. I created a bilingual character sheet, tweaking some of the usual stats and skills to create La Lutte, an autonome barbarian whose gender and sexuality remain ambiguous, and whose body and mind are reliable and easily fixed. I leaned into the safety of semi-autobiographical fiction. As an educator, ceci m'a invité à réfléchir à l'utilisation inclusive des textes identitaires, ainsi qu'à questionner à quoi ressemble la lecture éthique des textes produits par les étudiants dans nos classes. Still defines ethical reading of student texts as a reading which attends to the ways in which classroom literacy practices shape the production and representation of students' identities in schools, pointing to the importance of educator competencies as we assign and ethically respond to student texts and identities, as this can open the door to sharing more about oneself with pride, happy pride, or not.
Thank you, Amanda. And then I will present my identity text. So I created an ebook as my identity text, which serves as a platform for me to share my personal identity formation journey as an educator. So in this ebook, I crafted the script and collaborated with an AI robot named Midjourney to create illustrations that complement the narrative. To make it accessible to a wider audience, I have dubbed the ebook into two languages, English and Putonghua, Mandarin. This allows me to utilize it effectively in both my EFL and ESL and the Mandarin classes. The creation of this identity text holds significant meaning for me as it provides an opportunity to reflect on my experiences as both a student and a teacher. It has played a crucial role in shaping my teacher ideology. During my childhood, I held the belief that teachers symbolize authority and power. However, as I progressed in my teaching journey, I came to understand that the importance of adopting a student-centered approach to enhance learning efficiency. Upon enrolling in this PhD program, my perspective evolved even further. I recognized the need for educators to shift from an efficiency-focused model to an ethical model that values and incorporates students' lived experiences. This shift promotes a diverse and inclusive learning environment, where every student's unique background and perspective are acknowledged and celebrated. By revisiting my own experiences and growth as a teacher through this identity text, I have gained valuable insights that informed my teacher identity and belief, enlightening a more social justice focus towards my future orientation. And thank you for that.
Okay, so we're actually going to go backwards because our colleague Lihan is here. So I'll go back to her identity text. and we can hear about it. Lihan?
Yes, thank you so much. Now, this is my identity text. Actually, this is really a challenge for me to work on that because it took me some time to think of a theme that can really represent my identity and my life. And after a long time of reflection, I found my life can be well related to sound, which is shown as the waveform in the center of this image. And in the upper left part, it shows my language. Here I use the Chinese character ni hao and the English word hello to indicate that Chinese is my first language and English my foreign language. The lower left part represents my major linguistics, in which I am interested in phonetics, speech, sound, and perception. The upper right part represents my hobby, music. When I play the piano in the choir, the harmony always makes me thrilled. Finally, the lower right section represents my career teacher. I enjoy the moment when students listen to me. I also encourage my students to express their idea and have their voice heard. During the process of creating this identity text, I had a chance to reflect on myself, including my linguistic capital, funds of knowledge, and my relation with others. And I feel that the image is really a good way to express myself because people don't need to know about the Chinese language to understand my point. And meanwhile, for my teaching, although I used to assign my students to present their language and culture in the past, I never related these tasks with the idea of identity text. Now with this notion, I can emphasize explicitly the purpose of doing this and encourage my students to reflect themselves by using multi-modalities creatively. Thank you. So this is my part. Amanda?
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Lihan, for joining us. So overall, when we did this activity, this identity text activity, we were able to understand the varying identities that we found within even our small group and what sort of elements contributed to creating our personal identities. In doing so, however, particular areas were identified that could be challenging for some students. Amanda had just gone through this previously. So as educators and future educators, we can benefit from this tool absolutely to adapt to the changing diversities in our classroom, yet we have to ensure that as a practice, it is being shaped for more inclusiveness. And finally, if we skip over to the implications, perfect, thank you. These texts illustrate the ability for students to express themselves in a multitude of ways and self-expressions. We saw the varying types of identity texts that were used even by us. Yet in doing so, it could pose potential obstacles for certain students in terms of their levels of comfortability. So as teachers, again, if we choose to use critical multimodal literacy, engaging in the practice ourselves first allows us to be more reflective and better adapt such things like identity texts. So as we evolve as a society, doing this would allow these pedagogical tools to be better improved and tailored for these students that have specific needs and that are present in our classroom. Thank you very much.
All right, so before we wrap up, I would like to represent our group to thank everyone's attention for our presentation at Identity Tags. And also we want to express our deeply special thank you to Dr. Taylor, who offers us a very great, engaging and inclusive learning experiences, and thank you. And so if everyone have any questions and comments, feel free to do it. So